What's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Now, this book has touched millions of people's lives. It's one of, if not the most well-known success books out there. There are literally thousands of success books out there, so why should this one be any different? Well, Stephen researched the last 200 years of success literature and found something quite interesting. In the last 50 years, most of the books have been focused on the personality ethic. Things like public image, how you dress, how you perform in social interactions, positive mental attitude, skills and techniques to get people to behave in certain ways. These books focus on how to appear rather than how to actually be. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People takes an inside-out approach. It focuses on the character ethic rather than the personality ethic. In the words of Stephen Covey, almost all the literature in the first 150 years or so focused on what could be called the character ethic as the foundation for success. Things like integrity, humility, temperance, courage, and justice, patience, industry, simplicity, modesty, and the golden rule. The character ethic taught that there are basic principles of effective living, and that people can only experience true success and enduring happiness as they learn and integrate these principles into their basic character. You know, greatness starts from the inside out. Of course, there is a place for personality ethic, but character forms the foundation. Personality ethics need to be rooted in character. The personality ethic can be seen as fake, or as a fake it till you make it image if it's not rooted in character. Sometimes people apply these personality techniques in order to use and manipulate people to meet their own goals and agendas. In the long run, people will eventually see through this duplicity. But you can't fake character ethic. If you're still a little fuzzy on this concept, picture an iceberg, right? The personality ethic is above the water. The character ethic is below the water. It forms the foundation. It's where the greatest impact over the long term is. It's where you sow the seeds of greatness. The problem is that people don't focus on the foundation. They focus on the appearance. They're looking for shortcuts and quick fixes, but there are no shortcuts. There is no quick fix program. But if you endure and apply the following habits, you will absolutely achieve your goals, and it will help you develop better relationships. A bit of a long intro there, but necessary to understand the principles this book is based on. So let's jump into the 7 habits. Habit 1 is be proactive. Let's look at something called the circle of concern and the circle of influence. The circle of concern consists of all the things that are out of your control, like the weather, politics, what people think of you, the economy, other people's mistakes, and other people's opinions. The circle of influence consists of all the things you can control, your attitude, what you read, what skills you learn, your enthusiasm, how you spend your free time and who you spend it with, your habits and hobbies, and so on. With that said, there are 2 ways to live life. You can either be reactive or proactive. Reactive people complain about the things that are out of their control. Their environment and outside forces affect their performance and their mood. Additionally, they don't take action or ownership of the things that they can control. And then you have the other type of person. They are proactive. This type of person realizes that their decisions determine their life, not their conditions. Proactive people don't complain about things they can't control. Additionally, they take action to improve the things that they can control. Proactive people understand that sometimes we may not have complete control over a certain situation, but we can control how we respond to a situation. So let's look at an example of how a proactive and a reactive person responds to the same situation. 2 people take a test and then they both fail. One blames the teacher and gives up. The other takes responsibility and ownership, studies harder, and tries to improve themselves. The reactive person complains about how bad the teacher is, and the proactive person asks, "What can I do?" They look at themselves first instead of blaming and complaining. Don't focus on what you can't control, focus on what you can control. Take responsibility, and keep in mind, as you become more proactive within your circle of influence, it grows bigger. You bring more power into your life. Even if you only implement 1 habit out of these 7 habits I'm going to go over, make it this one. This one alone can have a huge impact on your life. In life, you either act or you're acted upon. Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. All things are created twice. The first time it's created is in your mind, and the second time is in the real world. So let's look at how it's created in the mind first. To get where you want to go in life, you need to have a map. You need to determine your life goals, your destination, and you also need a plan on how to get there. Otherwise, you're just aimlessly wandering around in life. So where do you want to go in life? Have you sat down and clearly defined the type of life you want? Do you know where you want to be in 5, 10, or 15 years from now? If not, then you're wandering around aimlessly at the whims of everyone else. Let me put it another way. Picture your life like a ladder. You're climbing up the ladder of life, working hard, doing the right things, and making progress up the ladder month by month, year by year. Then as you get toward the top of the ladder, you suddenly realize your ladder was leaning against the wrong wall the whole time. A lot of people live their lives like this. They don't have a vision for their life. They don't have what Stephen calls a personal mission statement. You need to make a conscious effort of where you want to end up, or other people will control your life and where you end up going. This is why this habit is so important. You need to figure out your destination first and then work towards it. If you're not really clear on what your purpose is, then think about the end of your life. How do you want to be remembered? Why do you want to be remembered for that? Find your purpose and make sure it has a strong why behind it. Not something like having a lot of money, but something that you have a real passion for. You weren't put here to make money, buy stuff, and then die. You have something to contribute to the world. You can add value. So find out what that is. Instead of asking what life has to offer you, ask what you can offer life. So take the time to think about your purpose, think about your values, and write them down. Your personal mission statement can be as simple as Will Smith's, which is, I want the world to be better because I was here. Very simple, and what you do is you keep this mission statement at the forefront of your mind, and whenever you make a decision, you see if it's in alignment with that mission statement. This will keep you on track. Go crazy, create your ideal life and your legacy. It can be whatever you want, dream big, and don't hold yourself back. Most of the time, the thing that holds us back is ourselves, so don't let self-doubt get in the way. Realize that anything is possible, so define how you want your life to be right now. Don't let the past or anything else hold you back. You write the script to your life, no one else. You are the programmer. Alright, habit 3 is to put first things first. If habit 2 says you're the programmer, then habit 3 is write the program. This is the second creation. As you learned in habit 2, all things are created twice. First in the mind, and then in reality. Habit 3, putting first things first, is where you take the steps and actions required to make your vision a reality. This is where we begin examining our daily routines and habits. Ask yourself, what's the most important thing for you in this moment? It's probably your significant other, finishing school, improving your health, or your family, right? It's not checking Facebook or Instagram. So why do we spend so much time doing these useless things, right? We need to get into the habit of putting first things first. Taking the time to focus on what really matters and focusing our efforts on what's going to get us to where we want to be in life. Really start questioning the scripts and the habits in your life. We've all fallen into the vicious cycle of waking up late, eating poorly, leaving late for work, rushing through traffic in a state of stress, being unorganized at work and being pulled in 1,000 different directions, and then getting home, eating fast food because you're tired, and then falling asleep late because you watched some new TV show. And then you wake up late the next day to do it all over again. This is the perfect example of not putting first things first. We could all use a little help in the time management department, right? And we all have a lot to do. So how do we manage time effectively? Usually we all write things down on a giant to-do list, and we tend to go in order from top to bottom with no real priorities. This is not the way. Or you schedule things on a calendar, which is a decent practice, but with one interruption, our whole game can be thrown off. You could also try daily planning based on priorities, but again, one interruption or emergency can mess it all up. Most of us fall into this time management scheme. But there is another way. The best way is to categorize things by urgency and importance. Stephen developed a cool quad chart for this, and you need to categorize items in the following. Quadrant 1 is urgent and important. This is putting out fires, emergencies, and kind of the reactive mindset. Quadrant 2 is not urgent and important. These are things like your health, exercising, spending time with your family, relationships. We need to put more focus here. These are often neglected activities, and this is where success and balance and growth are found. Quadrant 3 activities are not important and urgent. So most of us spend our time here, right? Interruptions, some meetings, some phone calls, and other people's emergencies. And then quadrant 4 are not important and not urgent. These are a waste of time, busy work, some emails, some phone calls, and so on. You remember the example above of the reactive and unorganized person. Now let's look at an example of someone who puts first things first. Joe wakes up early, exercises for 30 minutes, eats a healthy breakfast, leaves early for work, and has a nice, smooth, and joyful ride. Then Joe works on the important and not urgent things in quad 2, and he works on emergencies if needed, and then he delegates quadrant 3 activities and rejects quadrant 4 tasks. Joe takes a nice relaxing lunch and thinks about the rest of his day and plans his night. At the end of the workday, he closes out tasks and plans things for the next day. He gets home and prepares a healthy meal and then maybe reads before bed. He seems to have more time to think and reflect about his life, and he makes plans on where he wants to end up and who he wants to be. Basically what we did in habit 2, begin with the end in mind. I mean, if you look at these two different examples, it's a huge difference, right? No one on their deathbed wishes they spent more time at work or checked their Facebook more often, right? So again, focus on what's important to you and make it a priority. Commit yourself to it. Now the first 3 habits, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first, are about moving you from being dependent to being independent. They're about self-mastery. They help you become more effective as an individual by developing inner strength, character, purpose, and values. The next 3 habits, which I'll cover in the next video, move you from being independent to being interdependent. Interdependence is the highest level of what Stephen Covey calls the maturity continuum. The maturity continuum consists of 3 levels: dependence, independence, and interdependence. Dependence is like the relationship between a child and a mother, or even sometimes between a boss and an employee, if the employee lacks their own inner strength, values, and purpose. It's the attitude of you. To move from dependence to independence, you have to nail those first 3 habits. Be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. This is the attitude of I. Most people think independence is where it's at, right? They think this is the highest level, but in fact, interdependence is the highest level. Interdependence is where you think like a team. Think family, think marriage, right? A team mentality. We accomplish what we want together. It's the attitude of we. We can combine our talents and our abilities to make something even better. Habits 4 through 6 will help you deal with people, how to read the needs of people, how to empathize, and how to cooperate. And keep in mind, you have to move from being dependent to independent before you can truly become interdependent. In the first 3 habits, you move from being a dependent to an independent person by being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, and putting first things first. The first 3 habits are about self-mastery. They help you become more effective as an individual by developing inner strength, character, purpose, and values. The next 3 habits I'm going to cover in this video move you from being independent to being interdependent. Again, interdependence is the highest level of what Stephen Covey calls the maturity continuum. The maturity continuum consists of 3 levels: dependence, independence, and interdependence. Dependence is like the relationship between a child and a mother, or even sometimes between a boss and an employee. It's the attitude of you. To move from dependence to independence, you have to nail the first 3 habits. Again, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. This is the attitude of I. And then you have the next level, which is interdependence. This is where you're thinking like a team, a family and a teamwork mentality. We accomplish what we want together. It's the attitude of we. We can combine our different talents and our abilities to make something even greater. Habits 4 through 6 help you deal with people, teach you how to read the needs, and empathize and cooperate with people. They help you build strong relationships. Habit 4 is think win-win. There's 6 types of personal and business relationships. There's lose-win and win-lose, which is the typical mentality for most. In order for me to win, you have to lose. This is the mindset of someone is going to get the good end of the deal and someone is going to get screwed. This is a poor mindset to have, but people live with this outlook because most people have a scarcity mindset. They have a lack of abundance mindset. There's also the lose-lose relationship, which of course is no good for anybody. And I have a quick example for this one. I had a friend who got divorced and he was about to retire from the military. Instead of retiring and getting a pension, which half of it would go to his wife, he got out at 19 years and got no pension. In this case, they both lost out. Then you have the win, and this is not really a relationship at all. This is you just getting what you want and not providing value to anyone else, and it's pretty much just selfish. Next, there is no deal. This one's pretty much neutral. If you can't come to a deal where you both benefit, then there's no deal. And then we come to the best type of relationship, which is a win-win. We want to look for win-win relationships. We want to search for mutual benefit, and we need to have the mindset that there's plenty out there. There's abundance. We can share knowledge, we can gain, we can profit together. We don't need to crush each other out. We can work together instead. Life isn't a zero-sum game, so look at every situation with a win-win mentality. A quick example of a win-win is, hey, I buy a book for $20 and I get all this insight and knowledge, and the author also benefits by getting $20. So again, seek win-win relationships. If it's not going to be mutually beneficial, then default to no deal. Habit 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Stephen tells a great story here. Stephen and his son have a talk, and Stephen can't get through to his son about some issue they're having. He then goes to a friend for advice. He tells the friend, I just can't understand my son sometimes. He won't listen to me. The friend says, hold on a second. Let me get this straight. You can't understand your son because he won't listen to you. I thought that to understand someone, you have to listen to them. That's a great point, isn't it? For us to understand someone, we have to listen to them, not the other way around. It's common sense really, but most of the time this is how our relationships play out. We often get mad at people because they don't think the way we think. We all see the world differently. We all see the world through our own perceptions and opinions based on our own experiences. You can't understand someone unless you really listen to them. Try to understand their perspective first. Try to understand how they're feeling and why. This is called empathic listening. This is the highest level of listening, the others being ignoring, pretending to listen, selective hearing, and attentive listening. None of those are very effective, but most of us listen using one of these levels. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply before the other person even finishes. So before you judge, before you take action, before you contribute, just listen. So if your wife says, I hate my job, instead of providing advice or repeating what she said, which is a typical response, you rephrase the content and reflect the feeling and say something like, you're not enjoying your job and you're feeling upset about it. This gets you both on the same side of the table. You're listening with the intent to understand intellectually and emotionally, and then you can move forward to repair the situation. The time to be understood is when the conversation leads to logic and advice is requested. When you go down this path, maybe she'll eventually respond with, should I look for another job? This is when you can seek to be understood. This is when you can provide your advice. But if it goes back to an emotional level, then you listen again empathetically until logic is brought back. This creates an atmosphere of caring. Habit 6 is synergy. The idea behind this is that different people bring different opinions, ideas, perspectives, and strengths to the table. Instead of simply tolerating or accepting these differences, we should celebrate them. We should value these differences. This is what any good CEO does. They get their different subject matter experts and get their input to come up with the best solution. Another way to think of synergy is when you put two pieces of wood together. One piece of wood by itself isn't that strong, but when you put two together, the overall strength increases by more than 2 times. With synergy, 1 plus 1 can equal 3, 10, or 100. Think of how individual units can work together to create something even bigger. Another example is the human body. There are many individual parts that are amazing in their own right, but all the parts together create something amazing. So again, habits 4 through 6 deal with relationships. These 3 habits can help you have effective and interdependent relationships with others. The last habit, habit 7, is to sharpen the saw. Let's say you see a guy cutting down a tree with a dull saw. You say, hey, why don't you sharpen that thing? It's going to take 6 hours at this rate. He says, I don't have time to sharpen it. I have to cut this tree down. You explain, if you spend 1 hour sharpening that saw, it'll only take you 3 hours to cut down the tree. You don't have time not to sharpen the saw. This example can be applied to our lives on many different planes. We are the instruments, and we have to regularly sharpen 4 areas, and these areas fall into quadrant 2 activities. Physical, find the importance of it. Again, it's not urgent, but it's important. You can either exercise and feel good now, or pay for it in 30 years when you're in a hospital with all kinds of physical ailments that you could have avoided. The next area is spiritual. Ask yourself, contemplate, who am I? Where am I going? Meditate, prayer, music, art, and so on. The next one is cognitive health. Continue to learn, to explore, to expand, educate yourself, immerse yourself in another culture, teach others. And the fourth one is social health. This is relationships, living interdependently, spending time with family and friends. With all four of these areas, think continuous improvement. We must continually renew ourselves, and the best way to unleash your future potential is by investing. Invest in yourself. Strive for continuous learning and improvement. Doing so renews each of the other habits as well. This habit keeps you fresh so you can handle the other 6 habits. Make these 7 habits a part of your life. Don't just attempt to understand them intellectually, try to live them. Apply these habits and teach them to others, because the best way to learn is by teaching it to someone else. This is a lifelong process that requires patience. It's not a quick fix, it won't happen overnight, and it will be a challenge. As you continue down the path, you'll hit obstacles, and you'll fall back a time or two, but this is necessary. Old habits will pull you down, but don't give up. Keep pushing yourself, and you'll hit new heights and levels of effectiveness. As you progress, be open to self-discovery and be open-minded.